Hey guys, I'm Jax and I just saw Shazam! Fury of the Gods. Shazam 2 is easily the best superhero film that I have seen this year. That features a superhero that gets his magical powers from a wizard who picks up a staff and goes, touch this big stick and I'll give you powers, and I'm gonna say the words, Shazam! You know what? As I said that, I suddenly, in the back of my mind, was like, when did Black Adam come out? Because in my mind, I just knew I'd start with some kind of dig at Black Adam. A film I didn't hate, but it's not good. It's not a good film. So I was like, it's just a simple, easy gag. And I suddenly realized, when did that come out? It wasn't this year. Was it? October. It's, Black Adam, it turns out it came out in October. That's 5 months ago. It's all good. I am not freaking out about time just moving very quickly and my life slipping away from me and just. You know what? Compared to how I feel right now, realizing that it has been 5 months since I saw Black Adam, I was going to have like a positive to slightly mixed review of Shazam. But in hindsight, for 2 hours, I actually had a lot of fun. But I just, oh my god, 5 months ago, really. I feel like that's upsetting. It is better than Ant-Man 3 by a mile. It is so much better. My issues with this film is more that it's kind of like so different to the first in the ways that made the first unique and special. That film was so low-key. That film was so kind of grounded and small scale. And I love the kind of small quaintness of it. I mean, this film kind of has the same issues Ant-Man 3 does, where it gets so big and so bombastically spectacle-y. Depending on whether you like the spectacle or not, I guess you could really enjoy that or not. But something that I found so kind of charming about Shazam 1 is that it was just so low-key, this little coming-of-age story. It somehow was able to do the origin story again, but kind of seeing it from like a kid's lens, even though Zachery Levi is a big, strong, muscular superhero man. He's still a child inside, so you're kind of seeing this different, unique origin story, and it's just small, quaint, little story, and in this, it's just like big things happening all the time, and it's just like CGI things all the time, and big mythical creatures all over the place, and while some of that is really good, it kind of loses sight of what made Shazam 1 good. But, still just so much better than Ant-Man 3. Like, I cannot stress enough how much better it is than Ant-Man 3. Shazam 2 is an interesting mixed bag of a film. On one hand, I'm really disappointed that it isn't still a low-key, humorous, children's story, coming of age, like focusing on the kind of childlike aspects. I don't really love the big spectacle stuff. But then on the other hand, it really embraces the magical side of Shazam as a character and this universe and world that he kind of exists in that makes him very kind of unique in the DCEU. So on one hand, I love some of the set pieces and monsters and creatures and mythical things going on. There's a little sentient pen character this time round, and there's some really interesting big monsters and creatures and just mythical things going all over the place. That's a lot of fun and it's really exciting and interesting. Do I wish they were all more practical and they weren't all CGI? Like, I felt like a couple of them could have been practically done. I don't know, I recently, because a friend was like, actually, Narnia is good. How dare you say Narnia is bad? I actually recently, like 2 nights ago, watched The Chronicles of Narnia, a film that came out in 2005, and I was overwhelmed by how amazing the practical side of it was, blended with CGI, and it still holds up really, really well, and it's doing that same kind of crazy mythical creatures and monsters and designs and ideas, and they're quite similar, funnily enough, to this movie. But like that movie, it's just so much better. It still now holds up. 18 years later? And this film, I already feel like next year I'm going to rewatch it and be like, ooh, kind of dated a little bit. And it's like, not to say the CGI is bad. It's still amazing and impressive, but it just has a veneer of like, I just know it's like not real. Like it doesn't have that textury feel that you can just kind of, I don't know, feel like you could grab onto. There is one creature in particular, and I'm not going to say what they are or what they do, that is very funny on a story level for the characters, very visually interesting, and just like the kind of twist on the usual mythology we get with that kind of creature, spectacular. But I want that much level of detail and attention to all of them. I don't want to just see things and go, yeah, I guess that's cool. Could be better. Like, I don't want to be, I don't know, because I love creatures, I love monsters. So seeing them, it's almost enough. But I don't know, maybe my brain was just kind of a bit marred because I saw a movie that came out 18 years ago. That's not even like the best movie ever. Like, I'm not trying to compare it to like a Lord of the Rings or something like that. But Narnia did it better. And that hurts. I also saw Dungeons and Dragons this week. And whilst this film, Shazam 2, is better than Ant-Man 3, it has nothing on Dungeons and Dragons. And I don't, as someone who just loves comic book stuff and has never played D&D, I don't really feel like that should be the case. But that kind of visual design for characters and creatures was better done, and the morphing of practical to CGI was done really, really well. Surprisingly well. You know what? My final rating for Shazam 2 is go see Dungeons and Dragons instead of Shazam 2. That film is fire. One of my favorite aspects of a superhero sequel is that we don't have to spend all that origin time getting to know the powers and the villains in the world and getting to know each other. And that's like the main reason I love Avengers 2. It's just the Avengers doing an Avengers thingy. And it's not the biggest Avengers thing I'll ever deal with. It's like an episode of the week for the Avengers, just doing their thing. But I found myself kind of disagreeing with my own kind of mentality on superhero sequels for this film. I don't know, I was kind of like, wow, there was something so quaint and beautiful about this little child boy with his friend child boy, but now the child's a Superman looking guy, and them just kind of origin story, like figuring it out, and it just has such a unique charm to it. And I felt like that whole kind of aspect of the characters was missing. They have grown up like 2 or 3 years, and it's kind of a little jarring, to be honest. Like, you see a lot of the characters and they're just so much older than they were. It kind of reminds me of that first episode of every new season of Stranger Things, where you're just watching it and like that first episode, you're like, oh, they are old. And then they get into that weird teenage kind of thing, and you're like, I remember that phase. Not a good phase. And now they're like almost 18. And it's like, wait, how old were they last time? How much time has passed? I don't know. It just feels like, I would have loved them to just smash out a Shazam 2. And then maybe in Shazam 3, they could be going through these kind of plot points. Now, we've got 12 characters. Because even though they are the same character, there's a bit of a disconnect. And although one of them is the same because she's older, so she doesn't turn into like a 50-year-old woman because it's Hollywood. And this isn't me, 50-year-old women watching. I would cast... I mean, the only 50-year-old woman they cast is Lucy Liu. Because she looks like 25. My God, that woman is so just a goddess. I don't understand. But thankfully, I am not shallow. I'm not shallow. Sometimes, I was going to say mostly, but sometimes I'm not shallow. And I go, Lucy Liu looks great in this movie. Shame, her character is pretty one-dimensional and bad. And I feel comfortable saying that because I love women, but not for their looks. So if their looks are good, but they're acting bad, I'll call it out. Lucy Liu, I know you're... I actually feel bad now because I know you're doing your best. And at one point, you jump on that big mythical creature and it's good stuff. But your character is pretty... bleh. So whilst Shazam 1 original Recipe Shazam didn't really give all the Shazam family that much to do when they were kids before right at the end when they all got their powers, I don't know, there was at least enough there where I felt like, I understand this one, I understand this one, I understand this one, and I understand where they're all coming from, and they all create a bit of a crew, and then by the end when they get all the powers, it's like, oh, here we go! Whereas in this one, I don't know, I felt like some of them only got like 1 or 2 lines, and there is a bit of an inverse kind of situation at a certain point. There are a couple of like story beats that kind of give us enough with the adults and the kids throughout the film. But it did feel a little bit messy. Felt a little bit kind of more choppy, the way it would kind of bounce in and out throughout the film. Like one of the characters at one point is like looking at a thing and then later says a thing. And it's kind of like, in theory, I love that. I love that they're going to like try and put this into the film, take this character on this little journey, have them kind of do this thing. And all of them are really accepting. It's really nice and beautiful. I don't really want to spoil it, I suppose, because it's spoiler free or whatever. But the way they did it, it's kind of like you could cut out like 6 seconds of this film and that wouldn't be a story point anymore. And that doesn't really feel like it makes it a story arc. It doesn't really make it a character arc, even though it kind of pretends it is. And that's kind of annoying. And I wonder if people in that kind of situation find that annoying, to be like, have it be so brief, so quick, so underdeveloped. And whilst trying to develop that little character, and then the others get little lines here, and one of them's like, oh, I love this thingy, and then right at the end they're like, this is coming back around, look at it, that's an arc. It's like, oh, that's not really an arc. That's, you said one thing, and then at the end you kind of said the same thing again, and that's it. And I don't know, it's kind of annoying me because we have so many characters. I kind of feel like the film needs to be like 30, 40 minutes longer, but it's already like 2 hours and 10 minutes, but that's with credits and post-credits and all that stuff. I don't know, I think I would have enjoyed the film to be longer and to kind of really sit with these characters a bit more, because honestly, the best part of this franchise is the cast. The cast and the characters, these foster kids, fantastic, really, really strong stuff, and I love how unique and different they all are, but when you don't give them enough stuff each, it starts to feel not unique and different and kind of a bit stereotypical and cliche. And you kind of fall into that trap, which I didn't really find in the first film. And I think a lot of the stuff that works in this is kind of, you know, goodwill from the first film. Whereas in this one, even our main two characters, Freddy, the little guy who's like, I talk too fast and I love Batman, who I deeply relate to, and it's almost uncanny at times where I'm like, he's talking too quick and embarrassing himself in front of this girl. I love it! But also it reminds me of high school, and it makes me sad. But him and Billy don't really get enough stuff. Like, Freddy gets enough as like the kid version of Freddy, but then because he gets so much as the kid version due to story elements and just the way they've structured the arc of the film and the story, we don't get enough of bloody Seth from the OC, which is like, he's the best. Like, when they all appear and it's suddenly Seth from the OC in Shazam 1, I lost my mind. I'm like, Seth from the OC? The greatest man who ever lived that just hasn't been given that thing to do after? Now he's in the Shazam franchise. And he's in some of this movie and says a couple of lines. It just, oh, it feels disappointing. But what is more disappointing to me is that Billy Batson doesn't get, like, enough. Like, as a kid, he doesn't get anything. Another thing that is really disappointing in this film is the humor. While at times it is really funny, really laugh out loud funny, you're lolling all over the place or whatever, there are other times in this film where it is like, to put it politely, it is painful to experience. It is like really unfunny jokes, which I never, like, there is not a single joke in Shazam 1 that made me like physically cringe and go, oh, that's no good. This film like had a couple, like 3 to 5 jokes on moments and bits that just really didn't land, really didn't work. Kind of surprised me because I feel like humor and low-key heart and kind of coming of age is like, that's Shazam for me. Like, it's that first movie. This one, I don't know, it just felt so kind of confused and like, I don't know, it's almost this meta thing where it's like, it feels like that was a pure innocent kid who knows what's up, and then they start going to a teenager and the puberty hits and it just starts getting a bit weird and they don't really know how to deal with everything and it just gets a bit off. And sometimes they're really great and awesome and you're like, oh, this kid's gonna turn out to be a great adult. But then sometimes you're like, oh yeah, oh, teenagehood just, oh, it's just such a disgusting acne-ridden mixed bag. And that's what this film is. So in a way, this film perfectly encapsulates that. And I just didn't enjoy that. I didn't enjoy that, but also that is definitely not intentional. They didn't do some kind of meta thing to make half the movie bad and awful and disgusting to make you go, like being a teenager. It doesn't feel like that. But maybe it is. It's not though. It's not. It's just not as well crafted and thought out and executed. It's disappointing. It's disappointing.